as you can tell, can you hear me in the back okay? 'Cause I've had a cold for about 2 weeks now, and so sometimes I sound a little bit low key. So let me know if I need to speak up a little bit. Welcome back to our final session. We've got Karen online. Do we have anybody else there yet? Nope. Okay. Oh, Teresa. Teresa's online. Welcome to Teresa and Karen. So we're gonna do kind of a tag team here. The normal system that we used for this is being updated, and so we've had to improvise a little bit. None of you have to do that, right? Everything runs smooth, everything's fine. And I have to sit down so that Brenda can get me on camera for our online participants, otherwise I would stand for you. So I want to start tonight's program asking you about the forms that are in the notebook. And has anybody got any commentary? Some of you have worked on them, and then some of you haven't had time to work on them, and that's fine. But as you looked at them, or as you looked, took a look at them, was there anything that you questioned or you wanted to have some clarity on? Or they're pretty fundamental, but if you saw a blazing error or mistake or something that you would add, would anybody have anything they'd want to share about that? There's a new set with this class also, and that one primarily is just, does anybody take a look at that before the class? Okay, you want to?
On the services, like
Yeah.
area agency on aging, and then when I was working on it, kind of all directed me back to Northeast Iowa 3A site, and then I thought that's really where a lot of it would come from.
Yeah. And a lot of that is, another standard number to call if you're trying to find services in a community is the 211 in Iowa. And that's a clearinghouse number that you can use many times to link to all kinds of social services. But it goes into a little bit more depth than that too. I mean, you have an opportunity to write down some local, like a barber, or who's the beautician, that the person goes to on a regular basis, so that you've got the contact information as well. So it's pretty broad. As you work through that one, those of you that are working on it, you might, if you think of something else that should be added to it or would be added, why just send us a quick email on that. Because like we said, this is a pilot, and we are in the process of getting your feedback so that we can make improvements in it. Anything anybody else wants to add? Brenda?
Karen says that an ad that I would like to have considered is what steps need to be taken if a person that you're needing care for needs a state issued ID. This is something that I am working through for my mom, and didn't realize that everything that I needed to provide to be ready to take her to the photo and process. And I agree, Karen, I went through that too, and it took me 3 trips to the DMV to get Dad an ID. And every time I took him there, he wanted the book so he could study to get his driver's license back. So it was a battle. So if I could totally avoid that building, that would be high on my list. So,
okay, so we'll look into that one. Thank you.
Good suggestion.
Any other suggestions from the online? Okay. Well,
sorry, the only other thing I thought of in looking through this was, I don't know how popular it is anymore, but like my mom had the first alert or that type of, it wasn't that company, but knowing who, how to reach them and who was on that, and making sure those were stayed updated.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the word I was trying to think of.
My mother-in-law went to Caregiving at Mercy Home Health Care gave me information about that. So it might be
right, and just kind of having that information with all of this
would be good. Our in-house class has shared that first alerts and other systems that my chair is going to squeak. Other systems like that packets might be made available from the provider, but that would be one thing to add. It would be a first alert system if they're using that. And many of them are connected through the local hospitals, I know too. So that would be something to look into. Any other comments on that? Okay, are you all expert communicators? Okay. Has anybody had any formal training or education in communication? Has anybody gone that route? Okay. Does anybody teach in a program or involved in a program where you give people hints on communication skills? Okay. All right. We got an expert in the house. Okay. So we're good. Yeah. Well, that's what our topic is tonight, is communication. And so you're definitely, I'll open it with a story. I used to teach home economics classes, and you know that teenagers have their own particular style of communication. So one of the units we taught was communication. And can somebody tell me what are the 3 parts to communication? Have you been down that route?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody know what they are, the 3 main parts? Yeah. A sender, a message, and a receiver, right? You got to have those 3 for any kind of communication to take place. Okay. So several years ago, my husband was at a training program, gone overnight. We live on a farm, so I had to do chores. And my daughter was in junior high, and she was in the house. And my son was at a track meet, had his learner permit, so I didn't have to worry about him. And so I was doing the chores. And I'm one of these people that I don't wait for somebody else to do something. If I see it needs to be done, I do it. So we had a day, typical like today, windy day, and we'd had some bad weather. And the tin on the roof of one of the farm buildings was flopping up and down. And anybody that knows anything about tin, the more it flops, the more it tears the hole, and then you ruin it, you leak. So I went and got the ladder, put it up against the building, hammer, nails, crawling up there. I'm putting the tin back down again, and everything was going fine until about the last pounding of the hammer. And evidently the vibration was enough that the ladder fell down. So I'm stuck on the roof. And so I'm not a little person. And so all the neighbors driving by, I'm like a mad woman up there, waving my arms, you know, doing all kinds of, surely somebody could see me on the roof, you know. No, didn't work. It was getting a little chilly up there. And I thought, okay, husband's not coming home. Son won't be home until at least 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. I'm on the roof. Wonder when daughter's going to get hungry. So to me, you know, I had the message. I mean, I had the message. I'm stuck on the roof. I was pounding what I thought was SOS out, thinking maybe my neighbors would hear something weird or something. Nobody's responding. And so about 30 minutes later, Mom, I was like, where are you? And it was like, the message was clear. Get me off the roof. So I always laughed at myself in the 45 minutes that I sat up there and thinking about the class I always teach in communication was, yeah, this is a classic example. You need 3 parts. You need first the person sending the message, and then you need the receiver. And obviously I didn't have a receiver. So I was getting ready to camp out on the roof. So tonight, that's what we're going to take a look at, is just some of the elements of communication. And I'm going to flip forward just a little bit.
I think you might have lost your.
Oh, I did. Hold on just a minute for the audience here lost their screen. X that out. You got it? Okay, we'll go ahead and advance it. There it goes. Okay, so in the position that you're in, you're definitely working with 2 disadvantages. I get it. The 2 disadvantages that you're working with are that you're invading someone's privacy because you're asking for a lot of personal information that they've never had to share before. And the second part of that is it can be a very stressful situation, right? You've got, wow, did you do that or did I do that? Because it's really going to town and I didn't touch anything. Okay.
You must have a timer on it.
You run them both. Then we're good. Okay. I didn't think I did. So whenever you're doing the communication, then there are some other things that can help. And so in this particular one, the emotional situation can really derail what should be a normal conversation, something that you're trying to progress through. So it always helps to kind of brush up your communication skills and kind of plan ahead a little bit. So what we're going to do is just going to look at some quick tips on communication and some things that I've discovered over the years that work or that seem to be a positive. So the first one, kind of, if you know you're going to have a difficult conversation with someone, try to find the opportune moment when you can give them a heads up ahead of time. If this is going to be a family conversation, you may need to share some of the, like you've already done some groundwork here. You already have some notebooks. And if you decide that you want to share that with some other family members, you might just share with them that you have done that and let them know that you have that available. And then you might pose a problem for them or give them something to think over so that they don't feel like they're blindsided when you start the conversation, and so that they can prepare or have some of their own thoughts ready so they don't feel totally out of the loop. Remember one of those first videos we watched where it was a very frustrating time for that one person who was trying to convince the other family members, and a lot of emotional things got in the way of them being able to make some progress. So the message was there, but the emotions got in the way. Okay. What would you add, or would you add anything to this list? Okay, Richard?
When I deal with medical students, and one of the things that we suggest first is before you start the conversation, ask what the other person's concerns are right off the bat, so that if they have a specific question, that's already been answered, and then you can go on to what you're talking about.
Yeah, because sometimes you could just spend your reels and share a lot of stuff that's not going to be beneficial and just going to muck up the situation. Right. And for them, they probably have a limited time to do it.
Right.
Okay. That would be true too of family situations when you're trying to start a conversation. Everybody, it may be that you're at a family dinner or at a social event, and that might be the first time you have an opportunity to say something to a sibling and say to them, this is something that we need to address or we need to think about. And so, yeah, to ask them their concern first is a good way to create that situation. A lot of times I think in some of the reading that we look at when it comes to these difficult conversations, we'll sometimes have a listing of events like the death of a close neighbor or friend, or death of a family member might precipitate conversation is open. But that seems to me like sometimes maybe just waiting a long time before that opportune time would come up. But I do know that's an example of an event that sometimes makes these conversations easier. Brenda?
I've also used this class as an excuse for the participants saying, I'm taking this class and my assignment is, and can I sit with you and interview you, Yeah. So I've had them use this as the
opening opportunity. Did anybody have a chance to do that with some of your forms? Anybody approach someone? Did it help to say that you were in a class? It kind of neutralized it a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
I think the when to start is important in all this. And you mentioned, like an event is important, but not to wait until you're pent up the frustration and bringing people along in the process. So it's not, like you said earlier, a blindsided situation.
Yeah.
It strikes me.
Sometimes there are different personalities that you have to deal with too. You sometimes have some go to it and get it done kind of people, and they don't always want to slow down and let someone else participate in some of the decision making. The more people that you have to involve, the more difficult the conversation is going to be. And so you may need to find what your closest ally might be, or the person that you think is, it's not like you're teaming up on somebody, but someone who you think is going to have the softest response to your inquiry and begin to put the conversation out there. what about that on timing as far as everyone's experiences with that? When did you find your time to have the conversations that you've started? Was it a medical event, or is it something that you're preparing for now and you're getting ahead of the game? Is there anybody here that's getting ahead of the game with this? It's already, okay, a couple people are, all right.
But in part because I've had the opposite experience too. It's like I'm trying to get ahead of it for myself, or for, you and I to know that, because we had a friend die unexpectedly and realized, like, whoa.
What a mess it was.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have known. And when I took care of my mom, it was a little bit like the videos where that person was saying, like, no, I want to share this information. So I didn't have to fight for it.
They were
Happy
inviting
to
it.
have some help. And I had challenges with my two siblings. And I'm seeing your elder services tag, because I actually worked with an elder service counselor who said, maybe you should just act like you don't have siblings from this point. And it was a whole new world. Like, oh, because I'd already tried, and finally it was like, all right, I'm gonna move.
No progress.
Yeah.
And that is similar to what I've experienced. I had two siblings that, it's like I couldn't get them on the train, so the train left, and then all of a sudden they're running and trying. And so before I just would not even bring it up. Well, now they're starting to ask, well, how is Dad? So it took the train to leave the station before they finally decided to get on.
Let's see if this will advance. Oh, ours is. There we go. Take time. All right. I think we pretty well covered this one, because it's a matter of not waiting until you're in the middle of a crisis situation to try to start the conversation. And I apologize for us trying to keep up.
I thought of another challenge.
Okay.
My husband was the baby of 10, but he was the one that lived closest to Dad. He was the one that took Dad to all of his doctor appointments, hauled him up north so he could breathe, because the air up there was better in the summertime. And yet the older siblings who felt they were much more experienced in life and death issues and running a business, that was where there was a conflict, and it kind of made a challenge.
Okay, go ahead and advance the screen there. But my screen that I have in front of me is different than the screen back here. So that's why we're not exactly looking like we're jiving here. So one of the most interesting things that I ever discovered about communication and some of the work that I did, and I've tried this, and that is, if you're trying to have a difficult conversation with someone, so if I'm going to talk to Megan, I'm going to posture almost identical to her. So she's sitting here with her arms like this, and I'm going to cross my legs so that I'm going to look at her and I'm going to talk. And I've tested this out on people where I was having a difficult conversation, and it works. If you model the behavior of the person that you're talking to, however they're standing, sitting, if they're sitting, sit down. If their legs are crossed, cross your legs, put your arms in about the same position. And I don't know what, it just gives them a comfort level that you're actually engaged with them and you're talking to them personally. And the person I tested that on was my husband. When we were having a difficult conversation, and I thought, oh, this is terrible that I'm doing this to him. But it worked. It worked. It really did get him to the point where he felt like I was really listening to him. And we didn't have nearly because it was a difficult conversation, and we didn't have nearly the conflict. So mirroring, it really does work sometimes. So that's one tip that I've learned that does work. Eye contact is always good. You definitely don't want to have any distractions going on. The more you look at someone, it's like that's what I miss the most when we do the connect environment, is I don't see the expressions on your faces, and I don't know, I don't see your engagement. So I miss that part of using electronic communication. So those are things that we try to figure out ways, whether we give people those little quizzes or something else to see if you're engaged out there and if you're taking part in the class.
Yes.
Always be sure that you state what you hear and allow the other person to correct it. Say to them, you know, and I know people sometimes say, this is what I think you said. I don't know if that's the best way to approach it. I understand that you said this or something similar. And then the I statements. So we're going to do a little practice. So here are some examples that are on the overhead. And the audience that's online can type into their box to share their responses to these. So I'm going to say another one for you. And I'll give you a little time to read the screen just to look at the two examples. What it sounds when you accuse someone and what it means when you say I, so that you personalize it. So I feel that you do not hear what I am saying. You never listen. Yeah, those are pretty strong contrasts there. So here's one. I want someone to volunteer to try to turn it into an I statement. You ready? You're never around when important decisions need to be made. How would you change that into an I statement? Any volunteer from the class?
I can't get a hold of you.
Okay.
I would really like to have your help when we have tough decisions to make.
Yeah, I need you to be there. Yeah. Those are some ways to turn it into your concern, not that you're blaming them for not being there. You never let us know when you're needing help. You never let us know when you are needing help. How would you turn that into a statement of concern for that person?
Depends, but it could be, I want to help you, or I'd like to help.
Or just to say, I'm concerned. I was concerned when I didn't know that, you know, I was concerned when I didn't hear from you, that you didn't call.
And Karen shared, I'm here to help you. Please let me know how I can help.
Open that door that way. Now, knowing my parents, they would have said, oh, I'm fine. That would have been the response I would have received. Yeah, don't worry, I'm fine. Yeah. But I think if you give in a little more detail about, I didn't hear from you for a couple of days and I was concerned. Or I need to know that you are up and moving during the morning. Can you call me? What is it that you need to know to feel better? And I think most parents will respond when they feel like they can help you out, or whoever the care receiver is. It empowers them to have a little more control also. It's probably some of the conversation you might have with some of your students when they have to talk to patients.
One of the best things one of the students ever said in regard to having a trying to instruct a parent to call with a sick child. The student said something along the lines of, it really would make me feel bad that I've not done the best care for you if I didn't hear them.
Yeah. And so it made it feel like that person was helping him out.
Exactly.
And making him feel better as a doctor, so that they had some power in the situation. Okay, one more. You share more information with the neighbor than with your own family. How are you going to turn that one around? By the way, my father was like this. You share more information with a neighbor than you do with your own family. Any thoughts?
I think it depends.
I know that you see more of the neighbor, but I'd like to know what's going on too.
Yeah. You got a little you in there, because you said you see the neighbor more than you do me. Yeah, I know.
I'm sort of trying to acknowledge that they have an important relationship with the neighbor too.
And to value it. Yeah. I'm glad you have a good relationship with a neighbor. That's a positive. It makes me feel good that someone can you make sure they have my contact information if there really is a problem? You know, that's kind of a you too, but it's like, I really want to make sure I've got their phone number also, so I can talk to them if I can't get hold of you. And that puts it into the, where you can kind of get that information too. So,
I think sometimes it depends on why you think that might be happening. Like for my mom, it was like I had to turn it into, I would love to hear from you. Like,
yeah,
because I think she thought it's too much.
yeah, or that she was taking your time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were a busy person and she just didn't want to bother you, yeah, or concern you. Parents have this, if it's a parent, they have this overwhelming, continual little voice in the back of their head that they don't want to over concern their children, and so sometimes those are some of the barriers you have to overcome in that too.
In the case of my mother, actually,
Okay. For everybody, if you didn't hear it online, we had a comment that it was a neighbor that alerted our participant that there was a problem. And then if my mother was in the room, she would have some other versions about solutions of how she spoke to my dad about that too. So, all right, you just have to be sure that, and you have to think carefully about this one. It's very easy to let those hidden you messages slip into your conversations. So think about those a little bit. When a conversation gets off track, then think about, why did it go? Sometimes you need to walk away from a conversation, back off from it, and then think about what was it that triggered it? Was it because you said something that was a you and personalized it too much? Is it because there's some old family history that's in the way? And if the counselor said maybe it's just a time for a decision. And that's when the immediate needs of the care receiver, I think, kind of comes to the front. And those are other, your sibling relationships might be something that you have to deal with later on. So sometimes those are your biggest hurdles. They really are. And I guess I have I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and we're all strong-minded individuals. And so I've learned, I think one of the tactics that I use with them most of the time sometimes is, okay, it's time for me to be quiet and walk away. And if I see that the other person who's taken over the power and is doing well with the decision making, then I can be at rest and just say, okay, I don't need to be interfering. And sometimes we need to tell ourselves that to be assured. Okay.
One of the conferences that I went to for Alzheimer's, the woman that was teaching the class, she was a nurse and she specialized in Alzheimer's, but she and her dad had always butt heads. And she said that was, if they're unwilling to forgive, forget, move on, and help, you're off the hook. Don't hold yourself, don't give yourself the guilt trip. You're off the hook.
Yeah. Good solutions there. Okay, so during a difficult time, it may be that you have to eat a little crow, apologize if you need to. Sometimes that can be a good way to get the conversation moving again. And timeouts, little short time breaks, sometimes can be healing, but don't let them be too long. I think you need to get back to the conversation if it's that important. There are some strategies here on this slide that you may already use, but they do, to me, speak pretty powerfully in a way to reframe your own thinking a little bit about a difficult conversation you're trying to have. So the flip side one is to just completely look at the opposite point of view from what you have yourself and express that to a person. So it could be something like, and that sounds kind of, I can only think of some harsh ones right now. I guess I have to think. Somebody give me a flip side of a situation that you would explain to someone, because what's coming into my head I wouldn't share with you. That's awful.
Using the driving example, well, you could keep driving.
Yeah, there you go.
continue to drive and
If you
see
had
what
an
happens
accident,
and see if something happens again, and that
Mhm.
might be the flip side of what you're trying to.
that's a smaller one, yeah. That's a good example of a flip side. So sometimes if you look at the opposite side of the story and share that with a person, it'll be a way for them to kind of not be so strong-minded about staying the course that they're going. Okay, the other one up here is examples of exceptions. Example of, like, if they're resistant to going into nursing home or having someone come in to take care of them, then you could give them some exceptions. Yes, you're resistant to someone coming into your home, but it could be that this is going to be somebody that you can have a daily conversation with. It could be that it's going to be one less thing you have to worry about. Think about the time that you could do the things, name something they like to do. If you have someone that comes into the home and is helping you do this, then you're going to have a little more time to go do something else that's a little more fun. Yes, but is what this is giving them there. And then share a future scenario. And that can be something like saying, personalize it. Here I am. If you agree to have some extra care come into the home, then it could be, and don't give false promises this way, but the future scenario could be that that'll give us a little more time to come visit you, or when I'm here, I can visit with you rather than me having to do all these things that I'm doing for you right now. It could be that, and I know there's personalities. I can remember an aunt that took care of her husband when he was, had MS and he was failing. And I was a teenager at the time and was visiting their home. And she was not a good caregiver. And she was griping at him the whole time. And I thought how much more pleasant it would have been for both of them if she had had some outside help coming in, so that there was a little less stress for her and a little more of a comfortable environment for both of them. And I thought how sad that in the last probably few months that they were together, that it probably was a strange relationship. And so future scenarios is, how will it feel if, if I'd had my aunt and I was an older person, take her aside and say, how are you going to feel when Uncle Harry finally passes away and you've just been so angry at him all this time? Would it be better if someone was helping you? And so those are some of the things where you can kind of look into the future and give some perspective, maybe that will make someone look at things in a different light. Anybody got any other examples of those kind of flipped thinking or future thinking that might help in a conversation? Does anyone want to share? Or examples? Boo?
Yeah, my husband has become quite independent, and he really thinks so. One of the things that we are moving towards, having someone come in and help him, which, for the most immediate need is because I'd like to go visit my mother, but I haven't seen her over here. And my husband is absolutely fine. He likes the idea that I can go see my mother. And he's absolutely fine with, he's much more comfortable with having someone from the outside help than a friend or me, and he's comfortable with the idea that we might need to do this by in your work also. So, it's different people are going to be treated by different things. I think it's, my husband just really doesn't like being dependent on people who he has a strong emotional relationship with. He's much more comfortable being dependent on someone he doesn't have that.
Yeah, and third party. Yeah. Doesn't want to be a burden to you. Yeah. So that can be one way to have that, to reinforce that, the opportunity to take advantage of that a little bit. Find some other times when somebody else can step in. You may have to create a list of other opportunities maybe to get that him to be more comfortable with that. Okay. Any other comments?
It's kind of like everyone, you know, like my mom would say, but I would rather that you would do that. So you have to say,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you can always give examples of when you've really flubbed something up and just say, this person will do it much better. That's the other thing. Because sometimes it's specialized care that they need to have. And so not everybody's equipped to do that. So I think my mother would have understood if I'd given her some examples of things that I did in my youth, and she would probably would have agreed and said, okay, fine, we'll let somebody else come help. So she remembers the disasters. Okay. There are two, has anybody in here taken a class on powerful tools for caregivers? Has anybody taken part in that? It talks a lot more about the emotional conversations that go on it, and it's mainly to help with the stress that a caregiver feels. They have two forms of communication that they talk about. One is called DESK. It's DESK. And they spend a lot of time talking about it and actually have the participants practice it. And what it does is in the situation, you describe, express, specify, and then look at consequences that lead to a solution of a difficult situation. So they practice those within the class. Another one that they use is, and I'm going to say it probably not right, but a KETO, and that stands for align, agree, redirect, and resolve. And those are the steps that they follow in that. Sometimes we couple this class with people that have taken finances and caregiving. So I just wanted to ask, has anybody been through any communication training where they might have practiced those two? Okay. All right. There are lots of different ways to get a conversation moving too when it's stuck. Yep. Got it. So brainstorming is just all ideas will work. And this might be when you have the family conversations and you're having it and it's stuck. So let's say that you're in a family situation and mom and dad, or mom or dad, one or the other, have got to move into someone else's home, but nobody's got a home that's large enough to accommodate another party. Okay, so let's go around the room and each of you, just off the top of your head, think of a solution. So can't move in with you. What's your quick solution? Nursing home. Move in with sibling. Okay, pick the sibling and say, move there. Okay. Quick one. Stay where they're at. More?
A sibling or, you know, a child with to the parent, unless that was already ruled out.
Child, none of these, they can be duplicated, but none of them are right or wrong. You just throw something out there. Buy a trailer, put it in the backyard. Other ideas?
Have the parent schedule to share.
Schedule family members to go in and out. What was yours?
Have the parent help me to buy a bigger house too.
Have the parent help you buy another house.
Or buy an add-on to the house.
Buy an add-on to the house. Another idea. Any? Do our online people have any?
Small house, new trend, add to the backyard.
Yeah.
The granny pods.
Granny pods. Yeah. But if you set it up, the situation up where you just say, okay, everybody just start throwing ideas out there. And sometimes some of the most bizarre ones end up to be some of the best solutions. But you just want to move outside the box. And sometimes it can alleviate the stress of the situation too, because somebody can, you know, say, well, you got the old fishing hut down by the lake, you know, we could pull it up in the backyard or something like that. So brainstorming is a good way to get all kinds of ideas on the table, and especially if everybody understands that there can be stupid ones and good ones, and that it just gives you a bigger, wide range when you're stuck. And then another one is to make the problem worse. And sometimes you can use this one with caregiver, like right now you're doing pretty good, but What if, this is the what if you used to get from your parents, what if your little brother had fallen down the steps when you were supposed to be watching him, make the situation worse, just describe it in the most terrible situation. And maybe if it's a sibling you can't get moved to talk about it, okay, what if couldn't call us, or what if, and you just make it the worst, blackest, and sometimes that can bring people back to the reality of, yeah, it could be a problem coming up. Another one is this, solve the little problems that are in the way of the big problems. That sometimes can get into the personalities. Maybe it's some little disagreement that you had with a sibling that you could never get a solution for. And maybe you just need to resolve that one first before you can move to the big issue of the caregiving conversation. And you would know what those little things are in the back of your head. I have some smiles in here. So you would know what those little things are and what's bugging that person. And it could be just something simple like, the tea set was supposed to be mine and it's at your house and you never brought it back to mom's. Sometimes it's amazing how those little things can be barriers. So, okay, and the last one on here is start at the end and work backwards. And, you could, in that particular case, that might be a good one to use with care receiver. And that might make them feel better about some short-term or some first steps you want to take. And then you can put them in a position of being maybe in a nursing home and what that would look like. And now, but right now we don't need that, do we? And maybe this is all we need is someone to drive you where you need to go so that your driver's license can, you still have all this independence. And to make it look like, right, this is the end, but right now, let's look right now. And that sometimes can make someone feel a little bit more comfortable with their reality right now. And it's not such a big disaster because they're still in that situation. There's still a lot of things that they can do, even though they're not driving. So that can be one way to work a problem also. Does anyone have any other tips about how, when things are stuck, how to move them on? Any other ideas? Things that have worked for you? Okay, Richard?
Sometimes we suggest that basically you just summarize what's happened already and then just start again.
Okay.
And so we've talked about this, we've talked about this, we've talked about this. Now, can we talk about this or now what?
Yeah. Yeah. Put it all out on the table. And this is the reality of the situation. So, and sometimes people realize that that's, they've said things or done things long enough and it's time to take another step. Any other ideas on your communication skills? Okay. Anything from the online audience? All right. Okay. So in any communication, then just have a goal in mind. Resolve it in your own head first. What is it you really want to accomplish? What is the best situation that you want to achieve? And that's your goal. And sometimes when you feel like you're derailed, you can come back to that goal and get yourself back on track again, or get all family members back on track. Be sure that when you're having conversations that, and I wouldn't even be opposed to writing it down and putting it down on paper. Someone will do this and someone else, and this is what they will do and when they will have it done. And when you're working with large groups of individuals that are involved in the decision making, that's probably a good policy. Now, if it's just you having to deal with it, it may not be as important. But when there's a lot of hands in the decision making, then clarity, and before you even end any conversation, make sure you have clarity on that. Timeline for action steps when you want to try to get things accomplished. How rigid are you on timelines? Like in my audience, how many people get really aggravated when somebody doesn't need a timeline? Okay, we've got some people that like timelines. Anybody online that likes timelines really rigidly, that get upset if somebody doesn't get it done on the date and the time? Okay. How many people are kind of, okay, as long as I have a reasonable solution here and when it's gonna get done, I can live with that. I've got some nodding in the audience, okay, some others. Yeah. I don't know whether that correlates, and somebody could do a research study sometime. Maybe the people that are okay with it are the evening people, and the people that have to have the deadline are the morning people. I don't know. I've wondered about that sometimes. No, you're an afternoon person. Okay. But that is part of the understanding too, and that's awareness. If you know that a family member, you know, we've got our tag team thing, and I've learned a long time ago that my husband is a morning person, and is, if it's supposed to be done at 5 o'clock, he'll have it done at 3 o'clock. And so if we need to leave the house at 6 o'clock to get somewhere, he's going to be ready at 1:45. And so he's struggled with me because I'm one of those laid back kind of people. So timelines are important, and then respecting the differences in people, just like this audience. If we all had a project, we would have to be aware that if we have to do something for one person that's very, time is important to them, we have to respect that. Okay, and be sure that you continue your discussions and conversations. You can never, this is such a difficult situation for most people that you can't just have one conversation and resolve everything. You're gonna have challenges and continuing. And even if you messed up the first conversation, don't worry about it. Go back and try it again. That's the most important. And it's probably something you tell your students too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay if you messed it up, just go try it again. Yeah. And it's important because it's probably the foundation of how you get the best things achieved, is to keep the communication working. Okay. You ready for the survey part of it? Oh, no, we have presenters. I forgot. Sorry. I apologize. I do apologize. Okay. From looking at one screen, knowing there is another screen, why? Now you know how.
Do you have a screen?
I do not have a screen.
Okay, then I think you two are gonna.
Yeah, we're switched. We have, can you
Stay put.
we have two guest speakers tonight that are going to share some of the resources for
They're
you.
just seeing you.
Okay, I was about to
So
say. I don't know that I'm going to read her stuff, but well, I guess I'll just start. I'm Devin Inman. I'm the Executive Director of Elder Services here at Iowa City. So first off, let me thank you all for having me. It's been a little interesting watching some of the scenarios that they've put forward. Mostly because I've been fortunate and unfortunate enough to see how both ends of that conversation can happen. I began working at Elder Services because of what I saw in those. I saw one set of grandparents have no will, no plan. They were in fact immortal as far as they knew, and were never going to die and would never need help. And I saw my other set of grandparents where my grandfather passed away 20 years before his wife did, and had a will, had stocks and bonds set in place for her, had everything set up so that when she was no longer able to care for herself, my uncles, one who lived in Mississippi, one who lived in New Jersey, took her from Yonkers, New York, down to Mississippi into a assisted living facility where she stayed with her, I don't know what would be her mother-in-law, her son's mother-in-law. What is that? There you go. Yeah. Her son's mother-in-law. And as their memories both faded, as they went well into their 90s, they sat day after day with each other and their their mutual granddaughter, my cousin, telling each other the same stories about their family every day for years. And so just seeing the difference, seeing one side of my family fall apart, my father nearly died from the stress of working 2 weeks at home, running a home health business, ironically enough, and driving 100 miles to stay with my grandparents 2 weeks at a time, while one of my uncles took the same role. And so they switched back and forth, and that was something that I know almost no one has that sort of flexibility. One uncle worked on a tugboat 2 weeks a month and was home 2 weeks a month. My father ran a business on his own, and he could take the time off because he didn't have a boss to tell him he couldn't. No one has that flexibility to provide that. We knew everything about home health. We knew everything about what could go wrong, what does go wrong, how to talk about it, and it still didn't get done on one side of the family. So I decided to take the position here when my wife got a job at UI, and the Elder Services came out and said, would you be interested in it? And I said, I've worked in Medicaid long enough. But yes, because my grandmother needed Meals on Wheels. Even with having two people there, on and off, my sister and my cousin also helped out, and just seeing the need that they still had just to have someone prepare a meal so they could get out of the house for just a short period or do anything. So that's one of the things we do here. We offer a number of services. I say we start with the Retired Senior Volunteer Program, but really we start with you guys. We are the options counseling, I believe we call it here. For the University of Iowa, we have folks that we send out from our information and referral program that can meet with you here to give you options about what can be done. I believe, is that where you met them? Yeah. Hopefully they said that about maybe you have to just give up on your siblings before I got here. But it sounds like it worked out.
That might not have been a direct quote.
Okay.
It was not the first meeting.
And hope.
It was
Yeah.
very positive.
Yeah, and apparently sometimes those are the things you have to hear from someone outside of your family. And that's something I've got on my notes here, is that when you look at my father's parents, you can't blame yourself when things don't go the way you want. My grandfather had Alzheimer's, which we didn't know about until it was far too long, until my uncle came back from the tugboat, and my grandfather had decided that Social Security checks were a scam. It was sent from someone who was trying to get his bank account information, and he wasn't going to let him get it because he was getting all the scam phone calls that people get as they get older. And so he was paranoid about his Social Security check, and he wouldn't cash it. And my uncle came home to find my grandmother emaciated, my grandfather emaciated, and called my father up and said, well, that conversation you've been trying to make them have is going to happen now because they don't have the energy to fight you. And that's what it took. And even then, get a will, no. Let someone come into the house. That took 7 months of my father and my uncle going back and forth with this. You can do everything and know everything, and when it doesn't work, it's not your fault. But that's why people like us are here, so that when you have those difficulties, you can get that outside voice that says at some point, you just have to do what you have to do. And our goal is to keep it from being a nursing home. That's our primary goal, is to keep seniors in the homes as long as possible. And we're here to help the caregivers see what they have to do in order to make that happen. If you have folks that have decided a little bit earlier on that they are in fact mortal and that they will get older, we have the Retired Senior Volunteer Program. So when they've retired, they can join this program, go out and volunteer in schools. Some people a little more adventurous volunteer in the parole system, where they help do job training. They actually deliver Meals on Wheels to people that may have been friends or continue to be friends just a few years ago that now need assistance. And then it actually helps them when they need the assistance to know that these are people that want to do it. So the Retired Senior Volunteer Program helps them stay engaged, also helps them create a network of support that they'll need as they age. Then we have the Meals on Wheels program, as well as home assistance. Home assistance being exactly what you're talking about. It's just outside help. And the Meals on Wheels program not only is a nutritious meal for people who can't provide a meal for themselves anymore, it's also a daily, or in our case, 6 days a week, check where we hand them a meal, ask how they're doing, make sure they're okay. If they don't accept the meal, we call, ask what's going on. If we don't hear from them, we call an emergency contact, and there's a process for this. Most of the time they've gone to a doctor's appointment and forgot to tell anybody. But we're there. We're that support for them. We're that support for their family, so that they know every day. Well, I apologize. It used to be every day. It became very difficult to make that work with weekend employees. But we do provide a frozen meal for the nutrition side, but not necessarily for the daily visit. But 6 days a week, someone will be out there to see your family member, make sure they're okay. You'll be on the emergency contact list if anything goes on. We don't hear from anyone. We do a wellness check with police officer or EMT. So it's something there. It's not only for the senior themselves, but it's also for the caregiver. It also has the option that, like I said, you've got the RSVP people that come in that they know, they recognize, so they get to connect with friends again. And finally, since I put this in my notes here, since we have the legal hotline for older Iowans, not only do we do information and referral with University of Iowa and just for anyone in the Iowa City area and Johnson surrounding counties, we also have the contract to do elder abuse investigation in Iowa City, in Johnson County. And since I'm a little new to the area, the way I understand it is there is not a dependent adult abuse law. Is that correct? Or is it weak?
It's weak.
It's weak. You can call DHS, but since they are primarily focused on children in the area, we are part of a grant that will allow us to do the investigation and build the case to submit to DHS so that there's a greater likelihood they will take it. Or if the problem is already resolved, then we can help with that. We help folks find new housing when that becomes necessary. Sometimes it's just as simple as actually signing up for Meals on Wheels because they need an interaction. We get a lot of phone calls from EMS and the fire departments for people that literally they say if we drive by their house, they're going to call us the next day because they forgot we'd come out and talk. It's just an over need for the system. So, yes.
Are you said Meals on Wheels people are going out into the homes. Are they mandatory reporters?
They are not mandatory reporters, but we have an incident report process that if they see something that concerns them, and they're trained at the beginning, if you see folks in poor living conditions. Another one is if they say they can't make it to the door in time, so they'll have a cooler out, but they never, ever seem to make it to the door. That's something that we just need to send someone else from our agency out to investigate, not necessarily a police officer. So while not mandatory reporters, social workers are, and since we are set up through Heritage and who has a number of mandatory reporters, we pass things up on the chain all the time. So I mean that's most of what we do. There's some other things like financial management for Social Security benefits and things like that, but those are rather niche things. But if you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to try and answer.
Anything for Doug? And you're primarily in the Johnson County area, correct?
Yes, for most of our services, the Johnson County area, for Meals on Wheels, we have rural routes that have frozen meals. We go out once or twice a week.
No, we have some people that are on, like in Arkansas or that are online.
Okay.
So is there a universal connection that they could follow up in order to find Meals on Wheels?
The best way to do that would be to call the area agency on aging. I believe there's one.
That's their best
every
connection.
area. So we'd be happy to, if they want to email us, we can look it up and find out who would be in the area for the Meals on Wheels or for the area agency on aging.
And I don't know, Suzanne, do you know, is 211 a universal? Is that just Iowa's number that you can call to find out those connections, or is it in other states? Does anybody know?
I think in California it's 311.
311,
Yeah,
so it might
by
vary.
county. Yeah.
If you're at Iowa, 211 will get you to a clearinghouse where you can find some of the services that you seek here. So that's always another way to track it down. In our community, there are volunteers who deliver the Meals on Wheels. And so I don't know that they necessarily give us, I've done it, so I do it. And I don't know, unless that's changed in the last couple of years. Devin, is that a policy change where there's some training for what volunteers need to observe? Because I don't remember that I was ever instructed to do some of those safety check things.
So that's probably an internal policy
Okay.
on our end.
Department to department.
Right. So for instance, my grandmother received Meals on Wheels, and I believe that was actually through a church. It was very informal. It was sporadic. It's just what they had in their area.
In the area. So it would vary.
Right.
Yeah.
And Meals on Wheels, while it is a national organization that we are a member of, it's also just the standard. It's the Xerox. It's the Kleenex. It's just everyone knows a home delivered meal that has Meals on Wheels.
211 is universal.
Is it?
Yeah.
Good job.
Yep.
Smart
Which is
phones.
270 million people a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in all
Okay.
states.
So I have a big question. I was listening to what you said and I might have missed the big picture. So again, I was working with the agency quite a number of years ago, and it was through the university connection and trying to find resources, and because I had the feeling like, really, like nobody else has had to do this before, like it's got to be out there. And so is there still that resource referral point?
Yes, we still do that through the university. It's a little underutilized. Get your friends out.
I
I'll
have
show you.
recommended it to a lot of people.
When I present, I'll show you where to find the locations and times at our website.
But I meant like even outside the university, like is that part of what Elder Services does?
Yes. Yep. That's our information referral program. So the slight difference between what we do at the university versus here is the university, we will meet with you, and we will go back and look up things that may not be Johnson County or the surrounding area centric. So if you're asking about your parents in, say, Arkansas or Louisiana or something like that, we will go look up that information and get it back to you. Whereas information and referral is typically more about Johnson County and surrounding areas. We'll be happy to try with everyone else, but it's just a question of time and numbers. So.
And then, again, this was previous, so I'm kind of asking. So I spoke with someone and then kind of did a follow-up, and then I actually saw a social worker type, like for a couple sessions, and it was that kind of brainstorming, trying to put things. Is that still a service or not at this point?
We've had a lot of turnover since before I got there. So I'm not sure how each step would go, but that would be something we would probably do. I mean, right now we've got our information referral person helping with a little bit of home assistance. So until we hire that additional staff, we might reschedule that for a couple of weeks. I believe Facebook is up. No, I'm sorry, the UI.
No, that's
website.
for-
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, this is so they can see you. You just leave it there.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. Wow,
Scared to
that
hit the
really.
camera. Just press it on right away.
Okay, I'm on. And I'm Megan Hammis, and I'm with the University of Iowa, our wellness program, and also oversee the family services area that helped bring the ISU extension crew here for this class. So I just want to express my appreciation to all of you for your time and travel time to offer this to employees. We are going to be asking you as the inaugural pilot group of Finances for Caregiving on campus for your feedback as to what your thoughts were on this course, how we can make it better. Should we continue to offer this? Because Nancy, you're exactly right. Yeah, this aren't the only of our 18,000 plus faculty and staff who are dealing with aging loved ones and aging selves for that matter. So that's kind of where I fall into the organization, and Joyce brought up powerful tools for caregivers, and really as potential caregivers and as current caregivers, you are at the front line of all of this. And so one of our goals through health and well-being and family services programs is that you're able to also take good care of yourselves, because you're trying to juggle work still while dealing with all of this. And so there's probably 5 different resources that I want to just navigate to using our websites. And there's handouts in the back that just complement what I'm going to show you. But again, just kind of want to put the plug out there that you are going to get an evaluation tonight, kind of a follow-up to what you did on day 1. But then you'll be hearing from Diana Kremzar in Family Services as well with the survey. So we don't want to survey fatigue you, but we do.
Now I'm gonna duplicate what you do so they can see, because you're running.
I'll tell you where I'm
there's-
going. Okay, thank you.
So think
This
out
is
loud.
awesome. This is great.
Oh,
I will. I'll
just
think of.
lost the ink. Just a second. I just lost my
Oh, I think. Oh, shoot.
No, you should.
Even
no,
if you
the
hit the
first
back button.
Try the back arrow.
There you go. Yeah. So on the left nav tab, we're going to go to Health Coach Service. Yeah, perfect. Oh, no.
Just doesn't like that link.
Is this, yeah. Well, I might keep talking for
Do it.
our
Yep.
audience
Yep.
and, yeah, so this is something primarily for you as the employee. This is a free service for you to work one-on-one with our health coach staff on personal health and well-being issues, okay? People visit with the health coach about all sorts of things, like what types of foods should I be eating to sustain my energy? I have no time to do meal planning and preparation. Or I'm having challenging conversations with coworkers and loved ones. Can you help me with that? I mean, some of these communication strategies, you'll notice the method to our madness in coaching because we use a lot of these communication strategies. But I think what I really want you to know is our health coaches are definitely experts in health and well-being areas, free service. We have 2 locations on campus, Campus Rec and Wellness Center. Hours about 7:30 in the morning until 7:30 in the evening. We also have an office at Boyd Tower at UIHC within the hospitals and clinics as well, where you can meet with a health coach. If those just aren't accessible to you, we can chat over the phone, via Skype, whatever. So we just want to be very accessible to be able to provide that to you. So you're, sorry. Oh,
No, that's the same one. Because we're not connected to the internet.
coach again, I'm gonna
Well, you
move,
You're going to.
I'm gonna go on the quick links on kind of the bottom right. Click on Employee Assistance Program. So this being the,
It's not going to show on our screen. Just give me a second. I have another one.
I was gonna say, even actually
I'm
just
gonna leave
staying
it
on
there
this
and you
screen.
can see it.
Yeah, I mean, because if you can navigate to Live Well, you'll be able to navigate to all of this. So the Employee Assistance Program, maybe scroll down just a little bit. That's how you can get to EAP. Perfect. So this is free one-on-one counseling for employees and your entire family unit. So if there was a family member that needed counseling as well, you could schedule them or come along with them. And so different from health coaches, these are trained counselors who are also able to do resource and referral, maybe for specific issues that can work with employees for about 4 or 5 sessions. And they also have offices at the university on this side of campus, at the hospitals and clinics, and a couple of locations in the hospitals and clinics. And I think a lot of times traditionally people think of the employee assistance program as I need to be suffering, I need to be depressed, I need to have some type of diagnosed anxiety, and that is not the case. You know, they are able to work with individuals again on challenging situations, maybe some of the nuances of my siblings or my children or my coworkers. Fabulous programs as well on sleep. So all of us know how it feels when we're not getting great sleep. We're not able to do a lot of other things well, like make good health choices, do well at work. And we have some fantastic resources available through Employee Assistance Program counseling, specifically related to sleep. And again, it's another free resource you can access really anytime. And I think, you know, just in side conversations I've had with a few of you, it sounds like a lot of you are being really proactive. And I would say these are services you can take advantage of while you're still being proactive rather than reactive mode. So perfect, thank you. So third one, family services. So kind of our sister program who is sponsoring this group, where you can go to find our on-campus appointments through elder services is to navigate to family services. Click here on the left navigation where it says elder caregiving resources. And you'll find our 2016 academic year predetermined appointments. So these go throughout this summer, planned into next year, already set. Once a month, one of the counselors from elder services is at the university services building, as well as at the hospitals and clinics. And there are about 4 hour-long sessions available at each one of these time slots. And we have seen them kind of take a hit in terms of the numbers of people utilizing it. So we know we need to do a better job of communicating it. But I think also the message is you don't need to be in crisis mode in order to meet with someone. Like, really, I should be meeting with somebody now as I start to plan this. So I think with competing demands on our time, this is a hard thing to often make people aware of. And also links to lots and lots of other resources are available when you navigate here. So you want to know more about Meals on Wheels, you can click straight on Elder Services Inc. and visit Devon's website. So I'm just going to go back to kind of home base at the Live Well homepage where we were. And the next resource, again, linked right off of Live Well, financial well-being. There's a handout in the back of the May and June financial education on classes. These don't all have to do with caregiving by any stretch, but every month there's a handful of, again, free financial wellness type classes. Some are focused just on women, some are focused on young people, some are focused on savings, some are focused on retirement. Anything that seems appealing, you know, you can sign up for and it's free. You can bring a guest, bring a spouse, family member, what have you. So that's another really good resource that hopefully could be helpful. And then the final one I want to direct you to are some of the resources we have on resilience. And the easiest way to get there, there's kind of this scrolling header. And we have, oh, I don't know if I'll be.
Grab it and pull it down. You can move that.
There we go. Learn more. Oopsies. Here we go. So kind of for departments at the university, we'll come out and do skill building workshop for you and your coworkers on resilience. This doesn't have to do specifically with caregiving. This has to do with change and navigating change. All of us know at the university, that's like a common theme. We're all kind of going through change. And how do we move through that in a positive way? So we have lots of resources available for the work sites, but for you individually, I would direct you to these short videos that we have on resilience. And a lot of them do have to focus on attitude, outlook, communication. One of my favorite ones is tips for dealing with conflict. And I'm the presenter in this one, but I completely borrowed the information from another presenter I heard. And it's just how to view conflict in a new light, like 3 really simple, quick tips, because I know that's when I lose sleep, is when I'm in conflict. It just tears my gut up. I can't handle it when I'm not getting along well with somebody. So for me, that, you know, having just, you know, 2 minutes and 44 seconds of these 3 tips to deal with conflict is kind of a game changer for me. So those are our resilience resources, and all of these 5 things: health coaching, employee assistance program, elder services appointments, the financial resources, and resilience, I thought might be the most pertinent for you to be reminded of that are available to you as you kind of continue your journey through this phase.
I wondered why she had dandelion all the time on the picture. I wondered why you had a dandelion up there on the screen, and now the resilience part, the dandelion.
Oh, and it's a, you know, stock photo that we found that my work is growing out of a crack.
Appropriate.
So
Times are tough. It's the new UI logo.
Yeah.
oh my goodness. Is this being recorded?
Yeah. It is.
So does anyone have any questions for me? Okay, well, again, we whether you do it through the survey process or you can email Diana Kremzar, who was here on night 1 and then online 2 through 4 directly. We do really want your feedback because we want this to be valuable and useful, and we would love to continue our partnership with ISU Extension, since these resources already exist, to kind of bring them to others who could use them.
Any questions?
Was there anything from the prior presentations that you watched online that you had any questions about that you brought to the meeting tonight? Anything from any of the presentation on the paying for care or anything on any of that that you wished you'd have gotten answered?
I had a question about long-term care. Anybody that's maybe familiar with it, my mom moved into assisted living in October of 15. We went to do her taxes for 2015. The accountant says, "Where's your statement from the facility that shows how much is medical?" I went back to the facility and they're like, "Oh no, we've never done that." Whatever, they're relatively new facility, but they're in connection with a bigger one that's been around. I'll skip a part there, but they said they wouldn't provide anything that would show the amount of her payment each month that relates to medical expenses, so that she can use that on her taxes. Do most places give that?
Yeah, they do.
So I'm gonna have to pursue it.
They
with
should
that.
provide it. In my experience with some tax returns that did have, I work at a volunteer site and there's a CPA who volunteers for us. And we had a client who walked in whose mother, he needed his mother's tax return done. And she was partly from another state. So she was one of those individuals, like I shared in the PowerPoint, that actually received more than the amount that was allowed, the $310 a month. And so he did, as a CPA, he went ahead and did the tax return. It's outside the scope of our volunteer services. But I did visit with him while he was doing that. And yes, he does. You have to produce all the information about what was actually for medical care, especially in this situation, because she received a higher benefit than the $310 a month out of her long-term care policy. And so he said that became taxable income. So yes, he has to have all the records. The nursing home should be able to provide it and break it out for you on how much of that was used for actual medical care, so that your accountant can do that work.
But she said, assisted living.
It is assisted
And
living.
I'm
where
wondering
she's
if that's
at.
different than a nursing home.
No, because when you go to an assisted living place, you will pay for the assisted living, and then there'll be an additional cost that is like, depending on how many hours a week that person, someone needs to come in and help, whether it's bathe or
That's
give
qualified.
shots or check your insulin or whatever. And so, and then as that ups, it becomes a point in which you can no longer be in assisted living. You're shifted, and it's based on how much time they have to spend to help
Daily
you.
living.
Yeah, thank you.
It's daily living expenses. That
It could be somewhat different, I guess. And again, my experience was older, but my mom was in assisted living and she had a long-term care policy, and that never ever came up. But in part, it was an all-inclusive one. You just paid one rate. Now, you could be determined that you were beyond the scope of assisted living, but it wasn't.
depends on the language of the policy and what benefits she's receiving for what purposes, and then what they define as daily living assistance that she receives, what they put in the scope of medical care. So,
And so, like, we're in that process right now, the dance with the long-term care policy. And I know that's going to be retroactive. So one of these days we'll eventually get it all hammered out. But the nice thing about the care center is they know what lingo, what language, and it's all in their hands. They're doing that for us to get that all submitted so that they can get payments now from the long-term care policy.
but you should get a breakout from them. They should, yeah.
Or you can find someone that would willingly, easily work with you to get that for you.
Yeah. I think he's trying to offer some help.
We don't provide that service, but yeah.
Well,
And it's in actually another county.
Okay.
on the, excuse me, go ahead.
I have to believe there's a competitor in the area who would be happy to be easy to work with. That's all I'm trying to say.
The other thing too is that on the table, you have some cards from Iowa Legal Aid, and they have a special division for elder services. And so there's some people there that could be able to assist you a little bit with the definition and what the expectation is for the assisted living facility to clarify it for you so that you don't go expecting more than what you legally could get there. But, and I did misunderstand when you said assisted living, and I was thinking nursing homes, but, and they are complicated. Tax returns are complicated. And I know because this individual shared with me, the CPA shared with me how he had to go through and do it and everything. There's extra forms. That's another thing too that I don't think we mentioned in here too. If you are in a position, just brings me around to talking about it. If you're in a position where you have to get tax returns done for a care receiver, the IRS actually does have a form that you have to fill out and send to them in advance that registers you as the person who has the durable power of attorney to complete their tax return. And it's a separate form. You can go online to irs.gov and under power of attorney, look it up, and there's a form. And we oftentimes have to explain to people, you know, they bring the elderly person's tax return in, or even a spouse for that matter, on a joint return. So there actually is a form you send to the IRS that grants you permission to file a tax return, along with the durable power of attorney. And they're supposed to have it on record. And it's a good thing to do it prior to trying to get the tax return done.
Something you said reminded me that when in the online session, I did wonder about it. So you were saying that scenario where someone gets more from their long-term care policy than they're paying out for
Healthcare.
and that surprised me. I wasn't aware, like, why, this may be a naive question, but like, why would they actually pay more?
Some of the early policies that people purchased, the old policies, there were a couple of situations. I know a local insurance salesperson told me that he had one individual who had moved from another state and purchased the long-term care policy in the state, and the amount they had purchased or was recommended by the insurance company was based on those local rates. And so when they moved back to a rural community in Iowa, and the cost of them staying in the long-term care facility closer to their family members was much less than in the community where they had purchased the policy. So this person was actually receiving more every month than what their total costs were. And so some of the early policies, no, it was a contract where they, yeah, it was the per day amount that they were received was greater than the actual amount than what it cost them. And some of the early policies actually did work that way. Now I think they might be rare birds now. So I imagine the insurance companies have probably changed the language so that they adjust it depending on where a person lives, or, you know, the language in there. Question online.
Karen asks, does the IRS form also work for the Iowa state tax forms?
As far as I know, I don't know that the state of Iowa requires any kind of filing of form. Federal does. So I can't answer that about it. I don't think I've ever had anybody. I think the assumption is if you fill out the federal return and you're legal for the federal, then you're legal for the Iowa. Yeah, and most elderly people, to tell you the truth, don't have to file a state return. They usually end up having, well, yeah, it's usually a federal return a lot of times that they have to file. And there's Iowa grants much higher exemptions for Social Security and pensions than the federal government does. And most elderly people a lot of times will itemize more than you and I will because they have the medical bills and the other items that makes them tax exempt in the state of Iowa. So they're more likely to have to file a federal return. Other questions? Good conversations. We ready for evaluations?
There are no more questions.
Any other questions anywhere online?
If you don't ask, you'll have to answer.
Yeah.
Delay this.
I do have one more real quick.
Okay.
As I was leaving the facility yesterday, I noticed a sign and it said long-term care ombudsman. Is that like the same as this card that?
No.
That's another place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Iowa Legal Aid is supported, what is their funding source? Just the state of Iowa?
There's all sorts of sources.
Yeah, volunteer attorneys. And they do have some that specialize in Medicaid applications. And they specialize in elder issues. So that would be a good one. And then you can always too, there's the Iowa Concern Hotline sometimes too, will help get you to an attorney for some general questions also. Boo.
How long will it take the posting to online?
We can leave them up.
The recordings?
If they transfer in the transition and the update of Connect from the first to the new to our new version, they should transfer. And so they should be there. And what do you think is an appropriate time for you? How much time do you want for them to be available?
I've been sharing coworker.
Okay. Sidebar. That's good to know. Thank you for doing that. Okay. All right. Yeah, we can probably make them available to the public, if you're comfortable with 30 days, if that's going to work for you. So that we can leave them up. Anybody online need a little more time or anything?
I know
Okay.
that there were technical difficulties in person and sometimes online. And it's nice to see everybody here tonight, and it was nice to see you 5 weeks ago. But do you have a preference what do you guys feel about the online approach? Are you happy to be able to sit at home and be in slippers and participate, or?
I liked it. I was at work. I just stayed at work.
Watched them online.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's, if anything, the only thing that I would say is that, it would be nice to have a little bit more lead time. But on the other hand, I didn't really understand that until it was actually.
Karen says, I like the online approach. I really appreciate being able to participate in a class that is based in Iowa where my mom lives. So I have the right information and resources available to me and my family. Yeah. Thank you, Karen.
Much as I appreciated being able to stay at work and see it online, I could do better in face to face because I don't get so distracted by other things like
Yeah.
Multitasking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Even with two screens at work, when I'm on a webinar, I'll often be like, check email, and sorry.
Guilty.
Sorry.
We had a good amount of interaction and so there was something you could not pay as much attention to, I suppose, but I probably wouldn't have signed up if it was all 5 weeks straight in a row. And I
To be able to do it.
Good to know. Good to know.
That's what we're finding with audiences is that it is difficult when you have multiple content presentations to get people to be able to have a calendar that allows that. It's
And
tough.
I actually, so I didn't know about the online, but I felt like, oh, well, I bet they'll be recorded and I can figure that out. And I didn't have that. I was able to be present at one, but
Okay.
it helped me sign up.
Good to know.
Good.
Thanks.
Anything else you want to ask, Suzanne?
No, that was just the one, because the question I have on the survey is sort of could be give me a different answer, may not be clear enough, so I wanted to hear it from you directly. Yeah, thank you guys.
We're going to pass these out. And then the online participants have access to these questions through a web address
That I will send out tomorrow.
that she's going to send to you tomorrow.
Because I want you to review the revision. The revisions are okay? Yeah.
So Brenda's going to
I'm
send
gonna
those
tell you
out.
in person.
If you get stuck on anything, why Suzanne is here to clarify for you.
Yeah. And these surveys are a little long because it's a pilot. Going forward, we're gonna
shorten them up, obviously, but. And I didn't bring you chocolate tonight.
We have to figure out how to deliver chocolate through
Connect.
virtually.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna have pictures.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Write
That's
that
true. Pictures.
Pictures of
Yeah. Pictures of chocolate.
And I also was thinking in the future that anybody that signs up for the class should send us a picture, and then we could have a picture of the classmates in there, so as
Yeah.
it would help make it more of a community of learners.
So did you choose not to do video just because of bandwidth? And
No,
so just to
our
be-
system is being upgraded, and it was not available to us Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week.
But I meant in general, in our online meetings, to have web.
Oh,
like-
yes. Not everybody has high-speed internet to receive it. So by just putting a picture up, kind of help that bandwidth issue for those receiving. It's not a problem for us to cast it, but
Yeah. Remember the first time when we had all those glitches in those, in the video when it stopped and started and stopped and started? The guru,
I dropped the, okay, I was gonna go.
she dropped the thing on it and changed it to another format, and that's what corrected it for the rest of them. So we're all learning.
My advice for online degree programs, so.
Oh.
If you'll just hang on, Karen and Teresa, I'm getting the Qualtrics address so that you can do the surveys now that I know that it's all
Free and clear.
okay.
I'll try to get one of these things completed. Since I was traveling last week, I haven't done stuff.
Yeah, no worries. You're so correct. I don't say I do, but I do appreciate it. Okay.
Sure.
For what you did observe. So I give you my card and so here's that's on the screen. Here it is. Oops.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, so here's the URL. All you have to do is click on it. It'll take you to the survey, but I will also put it in an email tomorrow in case you don't want to mess with it tonight. And I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.
Years with my grandparents needed care, and so he ran out, did what he said. For years, we've been telling my sister, and I sat down in these conversations.